You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary people. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. I see myself as a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society, and giving them back, in the words of a UC Quayana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space.
Mr. Watts, he is armed himself. Shots, watch it, tear gas. Live rounds, also I can see that.
That's the window! The man is a boxer, man. Why can't put in a boxer, man, to do that?
But since my cousin there, no, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me.
Right? No, you come on the East Coast.
You listen to me now.
You gotta listen to me too, man.
I am listening to
Right? Now, I see you on the East Coast. The day when they get a protest of them, the next day, that's when you see one bigger heads come up to talk to my family. Right? And that's bad. If we didn't do a protest, we want to see nobody for justice. You see? I'm not holding back nothing. I'm not holding back nothing. I just need justice of my family.
If you hear me, black is beautiful. Santa Claus. Black is beautiful. It's a textile. Lift your head like me. You got to wear it for with dignity. How it burn out. Black is beautiful. I said, sing it along. Black is beautiful. Say, I'm black and brown. It's high time that we get rid of that old slave mentality.
Good evening and welcome to Politics 101, the image of Takumo Ogunse being unshackled by a young policeman. As you remember, he was arrested and booked as a Negro, and then he was shackled. A well-known person who turned himself into the police. The assumption is that he might have run away and they shackled him. And the young policeman unshackling him after he was granted bail. A sight that, of course, resonated in a negative way with so many people. And as I said since last week, if ever you wanted an image to prove that this government is racially insensitive, trending towards an apartheid state, governing by racial domination, this gives it away. I was a political prisoner under Forbes Burnham, who the PPP demonize as the worst. But I was not shackled. I repeat, I was a political prisoner under Forbes Burnham from 1980 to 1983. But I was not shackled. I spoke to Moses Bagwan, a name of the past, one of the founder members of the WPA, leader of the Indian People's Revolutionary Associates. And he reminded me that he was a political prisoner twice, in the 1960s and again in the 1970s, and he wasn't shackled. Takumo Ogunse himself was a political prisoner under Burnham, and he wasn't shackled. I am making the comparison not to say that Burnham was without its faults, or the Burnham regime was without its faults. I am making the point to say that those who today measure themselves against Burnham, measure their innocence or their virtue against the Burnham regime, must answer that question. How come political prisoners were not shackled under the Burnham regime, and political prisoners today are shackled under the PPP regime? Maybe it's still in the police statutes to shackle prisoners. I've seen them shackle prisoners who got away and so forth. So maybe it's still in the police statute, but why Burnham did not employ it, and why the PPP regime has employed it? Maybe Burnham had a sense of what conjures up in people's mind when they see a black man being shackled. Maybe. And maybe these today either do not have that sense or don't care. Welcome to Politics 101. My guest tonight is Dr. Henry Jeffrey, and we are going to, as usual, look at the issues behind the news. So, the International Court of Justice has ruled in Guyana's favor. Many of us expected it. Many of us are happy about it. Some of us are celebrating it. But lo and behold, our two major political parties are squabbling over it. What does that say? What does that say about one Guyana? What does it say about one Guyana? Are we really one Guyana? Takumo Ogunse, we have spoken about his arrest, his charge, and the manner in which he has been treated. What does that tell us about where we are in our politics? As Ogunse exposed something that the powers that be are trying to hide, much has been made about his comment in relation to the armed forces. But isn't the issue of ethnicity and the armed forces being an issue that the PPP and other Indian comrades have raised publicly? Have they not talked? Have they not said that the police and the army do not reflect the ethnic composition of Guyana? What did President Jagdeo insinuate when he talked about the possibility of the army kicking down people's doors with the coming to office of the Granger administration? What did WPA and Takumo Ogunse upset that caused all the major leaders of the PPP to call on the police openly to charge him? And then in the midst of that, Vice President Jagdeo announced an old PPP position. They do not want power sharing, that there is no trust between the PPP and the PNC. And more so, according to Jagdeo, we do not share the same values. What about one Guyana? Maybe one Guyana doesn't include one government. Maybe one Guyana does not include one decision-making or joint decision-making. Maybe the one Guyana excludes one Guyana when it comes to political power. So what is one Guyana? If it does not include one Guyana when it comes to political power and economic power, what is one Guyana then? Does one Guyana mean domination by one party and that others must genuflect and become an appendage to that party? It was Jagdeo himself a few years ago who said, if you want to be part of decision-making, join the PPP. Welcome to Politics 101. If you're joining us from Guyana, good evening. After a long weekend, Easter weekend, I suppose you're back to work now. Those of you who are joining us from outside of Guyana, welcome to Politics 101. Our guest tonight, who is ready to roll, is Dr. Henry Jeffrey, for whom these matters have been part of his commentary. He has a whole book on political domination. He eventually became a strong proponent of power sharing. He's a political scientist, of course, so he studies these things and observes them. Let us, Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Hi, David. David, I'm not hearing you clearly.
You're hearing me now?
Your mic isn't good. Your mic I'm not hearing you clearly.
I am hearing you. Let's see.
You're hearing me?
I am hearing you very clearly.
Yeah, but I'm not. But I was trying to. There's something wrong with either your mic or my mic. Something.
I don't know. You want to?
Right.
You want to step out of the studio and come back in and see what happens?
All right. Go out and come back in. All right. Let's see this.
These technical difficulties. So, one Guyana for the PPP does not have to do with political power. One Guyana does not have to do with economic power. One Guyana has to do with getting black faces to Babu Jan, using the oil money to bribe our people and put them in the public arena. That is what one Guyana means. Let's bring in Dr. Jeffrey and see if we're getting better reception now.
Yeah, we are.
Wonderful. Good evening to you, my brother.
Same to you, my man. Interesting developments, I suppose.
Yes. Let's start with the border thing. What is the significance of that ruling?
I am not certain at all. Let's see what happened here. From my understanding of the issue, the Venezuelans tried to get the British attached as a party to the case. To make this brief and simple, and the court has thrown that out. They have said no, the British are not party to the case, but they did say that the issue is about British behavior during the period of the 1899 arbitration, and that will be looked at. The British they don't have to be there, but we will have to look at that because the argument is not about the border as such, but about the Venezuelans' claim that the border, the agreement was fraudulently acquired because the British and Martinez, the Russian chairman of the arbitration, made some kind of a deal. That is what they have to look at. It's the British behavior. I am not certain that I can say why did the Venezuelan want the British there in the first place? Because this was always the issue. The British behavior was the issue of how they fraudulently acquired the kind of result we now have in terms of where the present border is. So my question was, why they wanted the British there? Because from somebody, there must be a reason. Maybe I'm just not seeing. Because now that the British can no longer be part of the arrangement, the British behavior still has to be considered. If you get him here.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And so the British, I don't think anybody win anything. The Venezuelans, that's why I'm asking myself what the Venezuelans thought they would gain by getting the British here. I can't quite understand that. Some people say, they were just trying to play for time. But what time? Look, in a couple of months, there's a country talking about not David Hines or Henry Jeffrey playing for time. And if it's not that they don't want to appear to lose to Guyana, they're gonna. But if they put themselves in a worse position now, in first place, getting this issue thrown out, and furthermore, if they lose, anyway. So I am not certain. Maybe you got another take on this because you follow this. And I think that the issue will go on. The court case will go on. They will have to look at what the Guyana, the Venezuelans case, that it's a fraudulent agreement, and so on. I'm really not seeing. I mean, they've lost, and I really can't see what the big issue is. Maybe there's an issue that I'm missing. But
let me ask you this. Immediately after Guyana got independence in 1966, the Venezuelans flexed their muscles, eventually leading to the Eric Williams announcement. Some people criticized Burnham to say that in a sense he conceded that there was a flaw. There was indeed a Venezuelan case. So first, is there any credence to that argument? And secondly, and this is more factual than anything, what has been or what was the British behavior at the time between 1966 and 70 when the Venezuelans were flexing their muscles?
Well, no. You see, you got to put this in sort of geopolitical context too. Chadi Jagan himself said. He says, man, this whole thing is a cook-up between the British, the Americans and the British, just in case I should come to power in Guyana to stop communism.
Right.
He said that, man.
Yeah.
And I believe that was their intent, because Provost is said to have left this letter that there was a cook-up, but it should not be published till after his death. Okay, so he died when in late 1950s or something. I can't really remember that. And the Venezuelans start making some noises about it around the time when it was necessary. So there is Burnham. By the way, it's a dispute. I told you Burnham's contention was, if this my people are saying that there is a problem with that there was some fraudulent behavior, it is only, well, we can go along and see if there was a fraudulent behavior. We're not saying there was a fraud. Indeed, we deny there's a fraudulent behavior. But what we are saying is they're claiming it's fraudulent. The British says no such thing. The British would have to back this up with Guyana one way or another. Guyana might be the major player here, but the British said that then there was no fraudulent behavior that has led to the agreement, to any deal with Martinez. But that's another discourse altogether about these kinds of border thing and the kinds of arrangement. The British are saying that clearly, that there is no fraudulent agreement with Martinez. And if the Venezuelan is making their claim, and they're a huge neighbor on, out there, you say, well, let's look at this claim. So what would you have done? You could have said, all right, we don't believe in any claim and leave it like that. But we would have been almost a similar situation we are now, or maybe worse, because the Venezuelans would think they are not taking them seriously. So I don't think that it was such a bad thing that Burnham did to say, let's look at your claim that there was a fraud. You're not looking at any border here. And as the court says last week, That is what they will have. They will look at that claim. Their job is not to look at the border. The question is if they expanded into looking at the border, no, that's another issue altogether. But they're there to look at the claim. And that's where we are. That's where we go. That's where we went there for, and that's where we are today.
Now, given the new geopolitical dispensation around oil, does this matter gain new significance? Is there now going to be a new twist to this whole argument?
I don't. Well, it would be a political. It can become a political issue, but the argument stays as it is. You can't just change an argument because somebody found oil, but they always knew oil being there. They never found it because Venezuela got much more oil than us, and they didn't want to follow it with Venezuela. So effectively, the minute Exxon got thrown out of Venezuela, it come in Guyana and find oil. You know? And I mean, all of us suspected that there was oil there, but the minute they find something, they cap it for some reason. So this is not just finding oil. This is how Venezuela have the greatest oil resource in the world. Why would you mess with Venezuela for Guyana with 11 billion barrels of oil? You're not going to do it. But once you fall out with Venezuela, you got Guyana, you come and find oil in no time flat. Plenty oil that wasn't there before.
The previous government, the coalition government, one of its arguments why it did not press for a tougher deal with Exxon was they wanted to get Exxon in as quickly as possible as a kind of buffer, if you will, against the Venezuelans moving.
But that's stupidness. That don't make sense. How they going to give Exxon against the board? Exxon, I don't even think they were in the. I don't think they even move out the capital from the equipment from where they were when they are Orinoco base, Norway, wherever. I mean, that really don't make sense. They wanted to get it could not have been that they think Exxon going to be a buffer against Venezuela. What? Doing what? When Venezuela got all the oil and Exxon is still there, and look how the table has turned now. In the sense that they need Venezuela oil, like they need Guyana too. Don't fool yourself. No, but they need Venezuela oil much more with the Ukrainian situation and all of that, and therefore everybody's playing up again to Venezuela, which is going to give you some spunks, as we say, to start saying, what about what you're doing in Guyana? So these things are, as you said, a geopolitical game you're playing. And the question, well, it can affect Guyana terribly because we had oil all those years. People knew, in my view, they knew oil was out there. They just didn't find it because Venezuela would have none of it. Now that they have found it, the question is how we go forward from here. I mean, it's a geopolitical situation we're in. That's not an Exxon and whatever decision come out of this court, unless it favors Venezuela, they're not going to accept it. Mm-hmm. Whatsoever it says, you can say it like, for Guyana, Venezuela not a sexy. So you gotta have the stronger party. No, it's only. Well, maybe that's why you need America to back you up against Venezuela. So that effectively, if Venezuela don't accept it, it would think twice about invading anybody. Not that they have said it, that they will invade Guyana or any such thing. But they will not accept it. The British did not accept the same kind of agreement. The Chinese are not accepting it with Philippines or whosoever. So nobody got a kind of moral authority to tell Venezuela to accept anything. So Venezuela said, well, no, we're not going to accept it. And Ghana can walk around, yes, and say, look, we won, we got this thing, and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, Venezuela not moving from where it is. Guyana not moving from where it is. And somehow this has to end in some sort of discourse. Maybe if the court comes out for Guyana, which Guyana has the stronger case, this thing was a cook-up deal. If the Yanks wanted to stop Cheddi Jagan, he said, so I actually believe him. And the result is they brought, they had this, and they raised this just in case he got back in power, they can deal with him because they don't want communism on the mainland of South America. So that's where we are with this. It's got to get back to some kind of rapprochement discourse with the Venezuelans. They're not moving from there, Oil might finish and they're still there. And we still here. And they're our closest neighbor and a huge one. And therefore, we would have to sit down and go, this, if the decision coming in our direction, which I think it should, because the case is better, it might strengthen our position against them somewhat. But at the end of the day, this is going to end up as a discourse. That's my view anyway.
Some people recall that President Jack Diot at one time floated the idea of making some concession to the Venezuelans. Do you remember that, and what's your view on it?
Well, I remember that in the sense that I remember it being said, and I think I read something about concession, but that wasn't a wise thing to do. I mean, a president alone can't come up and make no concession to my land space. But how does a president or any president not talk to everybody and see what they feel, then come up and throw that out? Because once you throw it out, it's there. Right? It's there. Yeah, I know the Venezuelans are challenging. I know the Venezuelans are challenging the agreement, but they are challenging the agreement based upon the position that it was a fraudulent agreement. When the PNC or Borno or whosoever agreed, what they agreed to, the Geneva Agreement is not about challenging the agreement, it's about challenging their claim that they're fraudulent agreement. Again, so far as I know.
Yes, I too was taken aback by the fact that a leader could speak about making concessions on the border without talking to other stakeholders, including the political opposition. Which brings me to the point now, the next point, where you see the government and the main opposition, PNC, quarreling over who made the quote-unquote victory by the courts possible. Are you surprised that that's squabbling?
Make what? Made what?
Made the agreement, not the agreement, the ruling by the court, which party should get the benefit or should celebrate.
David, let's move on with these people nonsense. Hey man, what's the matter with you? You even read this thing? I mean, I saw the headline, I just passed it. I mean, I saw the caption. You really serious? Who should get thing for what? They both agree that they should go to court. The PNC agreed and the PP agreed that they should go to court. So who should get what? The PP never...
I suppose it's part of the whole thing that we don't seem to, at the political level, agree on anything.
Exactly. But this you're quarrel about who should get benefit of going to court and winning. I don't even know what I mean by it. They haven't won anything. All they do is event. British not in the play as a physical party anymore. But it's the same issue. So far as I see is there. What is there to quarrel about? But you see, it's how it's the PP fault. Is how they are trying to put out this thing, and the PNC are reacting, and they're reacting in a way that instead of saying take a walk, leave it alone. They want to react. Oh, we got more benefits than you because we may be the ones that decided it to go to court. And no, man. But these parties, David, unless we can sit down and come together, a very immature approach by the political parties.
By the political parties, it's a national issue,
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
partisan issue.
Exactly, it's foolishness. That's why I said leave it alone. The minute you raise it, I thought you shouldn't raise it. It should be one of them things you don't even bother with. It's foolishness. These people are allowing, you see this politics, what it's doing, David? This politics are allowing all Guyanese to not get the benefits from that little oil we have out there. All they want to do is play around and win election, and if they can manipulate the election and give people who citizenship and all that, we have 800,000 people. If they sit down and really divide up it equally between all of us, we're gonna be well off. They are just sitting down and trying to expand by the looks of things, trying to expand the population base to get votes from this lot, votes from that lot, bringing more people. This is a terrible thing. And Guyanese must stop this. It's got to be stopped.
We seem to have lost Dr. Jeffrey there for a minute while he comes back on. Last night, the point that we were making, that the objective of the PPP is really control of that oil, and to use that, the oil resources are going to come in the next 2-3 decades to consolidate political and ethnic control. That is the objective. And they're prepared to manipulate the institutions of the society in order to achieve that goal. And that is what we have got to stop. That the PPP's ethnic dominant policies are geared to control the society and to use that control to get their hands completely on the oil resources and to ensure that they are distributing those resources. And if they have their way, after 20 years, 25 years of control over Guyana, when they are finished, our society, our multi-ethnic society, would become one in which one ethnic group, so certainly the elite of one ethnic group, totally in control of the economic resources of this country. So Dr. Jeffrey is right. At the end of the day, it is that oil. And all this dancing around comes to that. Let's get back to Dr. Jeffrey's back. Yeah. So, Dr. Jeffrey, let's go back to the APNU, AFC coming to office. Mm-hmm. And in their manifesto, mm-hmm. saying that they are going to go after shared governance. Mm-hmm. And I remember when that manifesto was being put forward, that our party argued very strongly for that in the manifesto. The others, of course, whether their agreement was stupid or not, they had to agree for it to get in there.
Yeah.
So we have to give all of them responsibility for it. And President Granger made overtures to the PPP and appointed Moses Nagamutu to begin to speak to the PPP. The PPP said no to Nagamutu, and the process was stopped. Before that, there was a committee set up. I think it was chaired by Nigel Hughes and included the late professor, I don't know why his name is escaping me, but it included Aslin Paris, I remember. Duke Pollard was on that committee. I remember giving evidence before the committee. I'm sure you might have. You right. But anyhow, that committee took evidence from a number of us, and then it compiled the report and turned it in to Moses Nagamutu. And that was the end of it. You and others, including myself, felt that even though the PPP might have said no, that the coalition should have pressed the matter nevertheless, and that the failure to do so would have then given the PPP an excuse for saying they didn't pursue us, and so there's no shared governance. Let's come now to the present. The PPP is back in power. And the question of power sharing, ironically, it was Ogunse in that very statement that they're charging him for exciting racial hostility. In that very speech, he's talking about power sharing as a means of easing the ethnic tensions in the society and bringing about some form of real substantive democracy in the very speech. So Jagdeo is asked, what about Ogunse's talk about power sharing? And he says no. And that the PPP, you know the story about trust. And then he added, we don't have shared values. Your comments on that?
Well, there's that you just introduced there is a whole long story.
Yes.
First of all, the coalition did a whole lot of curious things, funny things, some of which even internally may have helped them. But they came. And the minute, and Moses Nagamutu is like a red flag to a bull. You're going to put Moses Nagamutu to talk to the PPP? That means you don't want anything. Anybody in negotiations would know that. You cannot put Moses Nagamutu. It didn't matter at that time to talk. Even if Moses got to look over the thing at the back of the room or whatsoever. Moses Nagamutu left the PPP. They're quarreling with each other. You're going to put him now to talk to the PPP and tell me you're serious to go forward? You can't be serious to go forward. And furthermore, later you start defining yourself as already shared governance because you got the AFC. You have said that we got shared governance. This already the AFC. Last week I ended my article by saying, warning the PPP, this thing is not simply about getting some black people in the party, and some of whom, as you said, you're going out and buy. What effectively you're doing, you're building a little scamsters in the party. Politics was supposed to be what Aristotle said, the master science, the master activity. You do it because you want to help people. Now you are going and tell people, come on my ticket, and then you're going to get it. You're always scam artists in politics. But the point is, you are actually institutionalizing it. You're walking around the country, going to people's constituency and buying up the people. That is what politics is supposed to be. Politics is supposed to be, I want to be a politician for whatever reason, but it's always like trying to help people. No, I'm not wanting to be a politician to help myself. That's essentially it. I mean, it's absurd what they're doing. So, the PVP, the PNC, go back to the PNC here, because obviously they had no intention of do. Insanali wrote his book, the foreign minister, Rudy. He said, how can you possibly say you already got shared government with the AFC? That maybe he got 2%. What percent of the Indian voter got? 0.2%? So what shared government? To have democratic credibility, you have to have breadth. So they, just like the PP, you think you can run in African area and pick up 200 black people and say, look, we got plenty black people, and that make them representative of black people or African people? It's absurd. You have to have the breadth. You got to have the breadth. You have to have a much larger thing. And these people have representatives. You just can't walk past them, and you can't do things to undermine them and want to say you are building a democracy. So my position on that piece there with the AFC, the coalition, was that they had no intention to do that. They had none. They just come there, they put that within 6 weeks, they're going to do this, and that. You know why you can say they had none too? I must move back. So, remember you had an agreement with that Moses going to chair the committee?
Yes.
You remember? And then what happened? Moses didn't hear nothing. And you understand the opportunity that gave you? When Burnham changed that committee, I wrote an article on this. Don't say saying so. No.
You mean the Constitution?
Yes. Well, he put it there because he knows that the day gonna come when Chedi Jagan gonna fill the spot as chair, as prime minister, and he wants to be in the top position, obviously. But he said, hey, this was offered to Jagan since 54. You remember? And it's Jagan that threw it out because he had you see Alexander letter today?
Yep.
Jagan since 1951. I got to write down that this weekend. Since 1951, Jagan sent a letter to the Czechoslovakia Communist Party saying, hey, I want to bring my country to the communist bloc. That's more or less what the letter said. And then they got all these apologies for Chedi being saying he's not a communist, he's not a communist. Oh, the British just malign him. Well, you have letter now. He wrote that 51, Burnham was not even in the party properly. When Burnham, the PP was from 1950.
1950.
Right. So Burnham was even there then. When he wrote a letter to the Czechs and said he wants to bring the Guyana into the communist fold. Who wants communism? I certainly did. And by the way, for years, me and Chedi quarreled about this. I said, you are a communist. And at least the people who are important think you are a communist. And I got no reason to believe you're not. And yet me and Chedi remain friends because I'm telling him clearly that this not I took him my principal took him all day to talk, but that don't mean I didn't know myself. I always took that position that you're some sort of a communist. But listen what happens now. What can happen to all the PPP apologists who used to say that Jagan is not a communist? The British took advantage of any one of us Guyana wanted to live under communism? They said, David, this is a headline I'm going to put. They said there is only two times, there is only one time when democracy is wrong to have democracy. that's when you're using democracy to destroy democracy. You're using majority rule to destroy the democratic process. And that's precisely what Chaddy Jagan intended to do. That letter proves it, assuming that the letter is right, I mean,
Yeah.
right. But he was about to use the ethnic majority rule to destroy liberal democracy and maybe introduce some kind of proletarian democracy. I know what else. But that was the intent. And you can't walk from that. And that was always my quarrel with him. So, I remember all the time since long time. And yet we never followed because I told him clearly that's the issue here, And when the boiling wall fall, I must be one of the first person to go and tell him, your time come. What? And you always saying, I said, the time come, you are useless now. Communism gone. So effectively, what we have, what the PNC never intended to go this route. And they did not. They had, as I said, they had an opportunity with Moses. They could have used Moses as the main man. Leave it, let him run the government. After all, the president still have the overall say. What is the problem of keeping Moses there? What's the problem? Nothing. At least that could have helped the AFC to build up some sort of credentials, that breadth I'm talking with in the think camp. When they were doing it, I said, these are mad people. Why do you want to do this? But by which time, of course, I know they don't want nothing to do with no shared governance. They didn't do it. And when they talk about they get overthrown, remember, to this day, I agreed that they were overthrown. There's no question about it in my mind, that the West got together and get rid of them. And I wonder if they ever calculated in that is maybe the same thing they did not do, because that same issue, I'm not saying it is, but they have not, to this day, none of us know where they were overthrown, really. All sort of minor thing is being thrown around. But nothing has changed. And they still walk around and tell people, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to. This in Ghana, politics is just not about winning. They know that. A whole lot of manipulating go along all over the place. There's some election manipulation all over the place. And if people want to get rid of you for some reason, what we should have seen some kind of change that make it different for them to want you back. I see nothing. And they better keep an eye that Joe Biden in Ireland tomorrow, talking about the Good Friday Agreement. Better keep an eye that that's the only way forward. No, I told them they want to support the only way forward for countries like ours. It has its problem of management too. It has great problem of management because now you are putting all sort of people together, agree and all sort of. It will take time for them to get, but what it gives you is the breadth of discourse. When you want to talk about oil, you got the breadth of discourse. Today, with Exxon can't get away with everything it wants. Indeed, they don't even have to get away with it. You are doing absolutely, you are so distracted by politics and quarreling, they're just, you can even forget the accounts for truth and don't bother with it. Accounts is irrelevant, $241 million, who cares? I mean, we got to win. We got to stay in office. And therefore, no, I don't believe that the PNC had any intention of doing anything. They did nothing substantial. First of all, you can't put a red flag in front of me and tell me you want to negotiate. That must be the most childish thing in public negotiation. I mean, negotiations, period. You can send a man I dislike to. You obviously don't want any discourse.
So put Jack Dio's latest rejection in context.
Well, Jagdeo, for instance, comes out and he talks this nonsense that the PPP been. It's the same thing they're repeating. That the PPP since 2004 in response, remember after Hoyt came out and said she had government, I'd sit back and he had to think, he had to say, because remember I brought up in the Westminster type of system too, and he was your. But when you sit back and look at it, you say, "Boy, this not gonna work. You gotta have shared governance." So Hyde comes out and says, "All right, shared governance," and the PPP come up now with this confusion called inclusive government. Well, the inclusive government can be from it has a continuum. It's like democracy itself. Nothing, very little, and a lot. So shared government might be more the part about a lot. And that's the same thing, Jack, they'll come in and tell you, you gotta get trust. When you got trust, you don't need shared governance. Maybe you don't even have governments at all.
That's right.
All of we trust each other. It's the level of trust. As I said in my article yesterday, every time you walk out there, I say you're driving your car, you trust that the other driver value his life as yours and his equipment. He ain't going there running in front and drive into you. Trust exists in every human relationship, every single one. So when he make this a nonsense discourse, but the point is, it's because we don't have trust. I got to be at the table with you. If we had trust each other, I'd go home and sleep, and let you do what you like. So we don't trust each other. So I gotta be there to look after my people. When I don't look after my people, I see what's happening to them. You're running about now. Not me here again. The Starbuck News. What did the Starbuck News says in my ear? Starbuck News says, even the Starbuck News says, or is there? Yes, they can feel discriminated because the government not giving them any political space. Like if it's the government's capacity to give, the Constitution give you political space. How you win by barely one seat and can tell me you will not speak to me in any serious way because you got some concocted majority, even dice concocted because it's not settled as yet. But leave it for that. How that happens? How that happens? You gonna tell me, everybody used to knock the PNC for party permanency. That's what they're doing now, Yeah, they're saying, we have a manifesto. Well, it's only Indians vote for the manifesto. So what the other people think don't mean nothing. And therefore, government must be for all the people. Not for some, not for part. Party mean part of the nation, part of the country. You have to sit down with the other side and gaff. You have to say to the other side, no, man, let me see how we going to work this out. I said last week, that's why the British have the committee stage in Parliament.
Yeah.
The committee stage is for you to come to a national consensus about an issue. The second reading is a reading of principle. We can go cuss each other out there. We can say, what you are doing is nonsense. You should have been doing that. But anyway, you are the government now. So, and this is why you put it forward. And the government comes and says, all right, everybody comes and sit down and says, let us try and come to something that we can all live with in this law. Our principle, but we can live it in this land. That is why you don't got no committee stage anymore. Jagan said, a law for any law with more than 6 pages should go to committee stage. Nobody does it.
Right. Jeffrey, let me put you on the spot here. It's now open secret in political circles that when you were in the PPP, that you try to bring the two groups together. Not tried. You more than tried to bring the two groups together. And it reached very far. And then it broke down. Without giving away state secrets, what are the lessons you learned from that exercise?
The lessons I learned... The lesson I learned from that exercise is that democratic cabinet behavior is a different. You know, people say join. You see, I'm reluctant to join and stay long in any political grouping is largely because I know when you sit down in a democracy, you must face that sometimes. When you sit down in a democracy and you make a decision, it's just that you lose and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, which is true. You're in a democracy and you have lost. But it made me skeptical. That's the first thing it did. Make me skeptical of sitting in these kind of arrangements and coming up with the deals that the kind of thing I was trying to do. The kind of things I was trying to do. But remember, I was trying to do things that were because I didn't realize it. That, you know, after all, I was with Cheddi Jagan, and he always trying to compromise and things, and then he died. He always trying to compromise and things like that. Now, Cheddi Jagan died. Janet Jagan, old time, she's really old time communist. That is it. And she believes in holding on to power. That's it. And so effectively, that's what took place. But it taught me to be very skeptical of being in democratic groupings when you have radical things that you want to do, because you're likely to lose. Most people in the grouping not going to even understand too much what you're saying, and they're going to stick with the leader. So when you call them afterward and say, how can you be doing that? You said something when we were together. They're going to say, bye. When I said that, I was with the leader. I had to support the leader. So that's the essence of what it taught.
Yeah. Let's move to the Ogunse charge and haul before the court. Certainly, there must have been something that Ogunse speech at Buxton really did to get the government to react in the way it reacted, and ultimately brought a charge. Some people thought that they would have brought a harsher charge, but they brought this charge of exciting racial incitement. What's going on there?
I think that, in my view, again, Ogunse, remember here, I just mentioned the thing about the PPP, NATA opposition. For 50% of African ethnicity voted for party. And you can tell them that you're not going to talk to them, you're going to bypass them and go to their supporters. Who are you? The Constitution says you got to talk to them. You got to. 50% of the people you're not talking to. Then you're going in people in the areas that they want, local areas, and saying, we're going to take over and do this and take over and do that. These things that must be legal even. You go in Georgetown, we're going to do this. Market, even if it wasn't illegal, it's anti-democratic. People vote people in for something to happen. You can't starve in the city council for anything and all sort of thing and then come back and say, we're going to take over to do it. Of course you'll do it. You get the money and you now got the will because you want to destroy the other man. So, you know, what was the end part of it?
Ogunse, the WPA Ogunse.
I think, Ogunse. Yeah. So effectively, I think Ogunse raised some issues that are very important. Everybody, so Ogunse got a right. He got a right to go out there and say, if you take away my democratic right, well, it's not about what happened now. You got to keep your powder dry. Is that what he's saying? I wrote that numerous times. I said, that is the end play of politics. If you come and take away my democratic rights, then it's public news that this happened. You are telling me I must just sit down and laugh about it. So Ogunse raised that issue, but Ogunse raised a more important issue about the armed forces. in the sense that he's saying, look, we are kit and kin, and the old Desmondite story and so on. But from my standpoint, if I'm going on the street and the armed forces might be sent against me, I have to speak to them. I have to say, look, boss, I'm fighting for you too. This is not just for me. I'm fighting for all Guyana, because this country ain't going away, Father. We can't live together. Because it's, as you say, we didn't talk about shared governance, but certainly I am also fighting for you. But the issue is raised then about the whole nature of, as I said that last week, the armed forces, they are not beholden to the government or the opposition. They're beholden to uphold the Constitution. And them chaps in the bright. I'm certain by now, because I know the last ones did, some of them did, they got lawyers, they got their own lawyers, and say how this thing rolling in. That's state lawyers. We are supposed to uphold the Constitution of Guyana, not PNCville or PPPville or anything, but the Constitution of Guyana. And we are not going to go against the PPP or PNC or anybody if constitutional things are running. Otherwise, I will have to say that we can talk to them about it, how things are going too. This is not simply a one-way street. If they never thought about it, and they must have done, they've been there long ago. They must have gone and say, look, our job is to look at the Constitution. When the PPP, winning election is not, you had some of the most dictatorial and all sort of regimes who win election, not only in Guyana, all over the place. Indeed, the PPP is designated as a electoral democracy. Man, all they got is election minus, imagine minus electoral democracy, minus moving to autocracy. So anybody that works, they got to ask themselves, you can't say, I was told by the minister. Neuenberg said that the minister can't tell you to do all sorts of constitutional things. Indeed, even laws, if they are sufficiently vicious, can be just illegal and wrong. So, Ogunzai raised all of those questions, make all of those questions come to the top. All of those questions. And therefore, it's not, I don't know what else he did particularly wrong. What did he wrong? You are taking my rights. I have a right to try to fight for my rights. I have a right to look at any force and say, look, I'm fighting for your rights too. He never said that you were fighting for black people's rights alone. He said we need shared governance. Let me sit down and part the thing equitably. Where's that? I'd like to see what can come out of this case anyway. For those reasons, if nothing else.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey, really tonight, going from the recent ruling at the International Court of Justice to shared governance / power sharing, to the real meaning of Ogunse's statement. And whether we like it or not, Guyana has to deal with what Ogunse and the WPA have raised. There's no escaping it anymore. And perhaps that is what has the PPP fuming, because they felt that they controlled the narrative, and because they control the narrative, they control the political reflexes in the society. And it seems that Ogunse and the WPA have punctured that we reflect here, Henry Jeffrey, because the major opposition, PPP, the PNC, seems to be also in contention here, because Jack Dio said that there seemed to be an agreement between the PNC and the WPA, that the WPA will push the radical issue, and that the PNC would sit back and try to be the moderate party. any credence from your standpoint to that argument?
I think so myself. I think so myself. Because here. I mean, you ask it. I say,
Yes.
yeah, I think so myself. I think it's a wise strategy. It's a good strategy. It's a strategy because something's got to be said, but the PNC can't say it. The PNC, even put. I never leave that. But the point is, the PNC see itself. That is the danger with the PNC. The PNC is still. It's for me, the PNC is still problematic in the sense it sees itself almost like the PPP sees itself. It can take Guyana, make it into one Guyana. Yeah, by itself. Yes. The PNC hasn't said, Aubrey Norton has said that he's into this shared government thing. The PNC making up, they by now should have said what we mean by this, how we plan to go forward with this, and all sort of things. Then saying, so they're at the stage where they themselves, indeed, they said they can win election. You understand me? Now it's the same mode we're into. If we can win by one seat or two, we can run the country and make it better. Bring a one Guyana, just like our friend one Guyana. Might me call it, they're gonna call it something else, but it's the same thing. So they have not give me the impression that if they want win election to do what? I'm not certain to do what they did before them. Nobody gonna let them win for the first place. Anyway, so what are they intend to do? So when I see y'all come up with this, I said this must be a strategy. You got to be, because it's a great strategy. Because you got to get somebody out there to push that agenda. So I said it might be a great strategy. Unfortunately, it looks like it is not, but I'm not.
I plead the fifth, Dr. Jeffrey. Dr. Henry Jeffrey there, being as candid as he always is, really raising questions, asking questions about where we are at this particular moment. It's clear that Jack Dio believes that. He repeated it the last time I counted 3 times over the last couple of weeks. I am a leading member of the WPA, and they have not appointed me to let their secrets out. So I will pass if you're asking that question. Dr. Jeffrey, closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts is, I think, all right. Let me, I didn't even know. Yeah, there are thoughts. Everything is a thought. But I think that you must sit down seriously and read that letter that Alexander wrote.
Mm-hmm.
It has done, and it has done. The PvP gonna have to bring out all the propagandists to deal with that, baby. Because essentially, it's not only saying that Teddy Jagan was a communist. It's saying he wasn't even a nationalist. He was an international communist. He wanted to carry Guyana into the communist fold. And look, what I mean, carry us, make us, I don't know, Cuba, whatsoever you want to say. That was the wash down here. And therefore, all the people, and I want to remind that the people who fought against Teddy Jagan are not necessarily PNC. The PNC come to it late. It's the UF with Kit and all of them. They're fighting against it because they were, they were giving more information than others, and they were fighting against the PPP to overthrow them. It's not Burnham starting to overthrow no PPP. Indeed, Burnham, my understanding is Burnham was called to a certain meeting at Park Hotel in Main Street, and that's where they tried to make a deal, and a deal made.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so it's not Burnham start overthrowing no PNC. Long the church, all of them that overthrow PPP. The problem came after Burnham overthrew rigged the election throughout the year. Then the church, everybody say, oh, yeah, the rigged election. But they rigged the election against Jagan from day one. They're changing all sort of constituencies. You got one constituency with 5,000 people in Georgetown, got 3 seats. You got Jagan with 15,000 people in one constituency, get you 1 seat. Who making them rules? It's the British and the people. So they were rigging elections from Jagan from day one. So they mustn't come and tell nobody that they're rigging election. Yeah. It was rigging election.
I had to remind Kit of that De Geer said he is in it to oppose, expose, and depose.
But what happened after? After Burnham threw it, you see De Geer wait. You heard anything from De Geer? Politically from De Geer until the communists all fall?
Yeah, he didn't say
Not
anything.
A thing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
Yeah.
And therefore I'm telling you, as I said before, the only thing, the worst thing about, you can think, was only one thing wrong, what bad about the practice of democracy is when it's being used to destroy democracy. And that letter that Vincent says today said that Cheddi Jagan was attempting to use his majority rule to destroy liberal democracy. And as such, the Americans had to get rid of him, regardless of what nonsense they say or whatsoever. That was it. If that letter is correct.
Yeah. And Henry, before you go, I remember years ago, Guyana put the PPP's constitutional proposal from the 1960s that they were putting at the independence talks. And when I read those constitutional proposals, it went further than Burnham's 1980 constitution. When I thought, I said, brother, you see, but this thing gone further than Burnham. He smiled, intimated. That's why I give you to read. That is why the PPP always said they didn't have a problem with the 1980 constitution. It's Burnham they had a problem.
It's partly that. Yeah, essentially. And they say it even better when they're in power because they like it.
Yes. Henry Jeffrey here tonight. Really wonderful conversation. You all have stayed right through. Thank you, my brother. And I'll see you in a few.
Again, down the road.
Right. Nice program tonight, I think. A wonderful discussion. I'm sure there are a few things that you all picked up that you probably didn't know, wasn't aware of, or you might have. I read that Alexander letter today, and I said, wow, I've got to get Vincent back. And I did tell him last night, I've got to get him back for us to talk the politics. And then I saw his letter today. So he's going to be back sooner than later. And that's what this discussion is about. That's what the discourse is about. That's why they want to get us off air and all kinds of things. They're writing letters left, right, and center to my workplace, to my university, trying to get me fired, saying that I am trying to overthrow an elected government, saying that I'm preaching racism. They've been doing that now for the better part of 20 years, and they continue to do it, trying to tell my university I'm trying to overthrow an elected government. Not for the first time they have done that, but I'll continue to fight them. I will continue to fight them. I'll continue to fight them because I know that we do have the truth on our side, that we have opposed all governments in Guyana when they've overreached. And this PPP government is no exception. Let them do their do. We are going to continue to do our work. Good night. See you all tomorrow night. Ogunse is going to be on tomorrow night. So there we have it. Ogunse on tomorrow night.